Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
Welcome, Shannon. I heard that someone has a birthday today.
So, Darcy.
All right. Yes.
Oh, I just got a message from Tracy that she's having trouble logging in. So,
Okay. So we'll wait for a minute. Okay. Let's see. Did she say if she needs some help, passcode or anything, or just an extra minute?
I'm going to ask her.
Oh, thank you.
She must have my phone number.
Yeah, that's okay as long as she does. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll take the roll, and we'll get Tracy in here by the end of that. Paula, would you please take the roll for us?
Diana Bailey,
Present.
Stacy Coburn,
Present.
Lindsay Chimay,
Present.
Darcy Long,
Present.
McLaughlin, absent, Dan Richardson,
Present.
Shannon Saldivar, Kathy Schwartz,
Present.
and I don't see Tracy yet.
Okay.
She said she's going to run to her office if she can't get things to work.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. All right, so let's please join me by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item is approval of the agenda, and I do have one addition to that. So this will be item 9B, discussion item. It's going to be Columbia Gorge Community College fermentation science partnership opportunity. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Do I have a second?
Second, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is passed. Before we launch into some public comment, I just want to welcome our newest board member, Shannon Saldivar. Shannon is joining us as a community member and downtown business owner. So welcome, Shannon. And as alluded to earlier, happy birthday, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't this the best birthday party ever?
Of course.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I don't know about that, but okay. All right, so at this time, I want to open up to public comment. Is there any member of the public here who would like to say something? I'm not seeing anybody waving at me. Okay. So Alice, we're going to go on to staff comments and project updates, and that puts you up.
Good evening, Chair Long and members of the board. Thank you. Our projects are moving right along. So I think I gave a pretty thorough update on the Tony's building. We're still in the same situation of applying for getting ourselves prepped to apply for the Brownfield Grant to assist with 250,000 plus is what we'll be asking for to assist with the demolition of it'll be the Oregon Brownfield Cleanup Fund out of Business Oregon to assist with the demolition of the Tony's building. That will be in the proposed budget that you review next year, that potential revenue. And just to be safe, I included the total amount also of the total cost of the demo, though I think it will be largely defrayed by this grant if it's awarded, and I think it will be. And the First Street project is moving right along. More environmental work. I had a chance to talk to Chair Long about this earlier last week, and that is that because ODOT's involved and we have federal money involved, we have more scrutiny and more requirements. And one of those is just doing some more soil testing around the near the area where the road will be put in, so to make sure that the fill material is structurally sound around the sidewalks and the new street. So that work will be underway soon. I'm going to write a separate contract for that will be outside the federal grant. It's something that we need to do, and we can move faster actually if we do it ourselves. And so I'm going to move forward with that. And I think it's an additional 15,000 or something like that. So more to come, but very, very pleased with the progress we're making. It's just not as fast as I had hoped, but we're actually moving faster than I thought we would a year ago. So here we go. That's all I have. Oh, I did want to say we're going to be doing all in-person meetings beginning our next meeting. We do have a budget, our annual budget hearings, and that will be Tuesday, August 12th. Paula, did I get that right?
I think you mean April.
Sorry, it's another month that starts with an A. Yeah, April 12th. That's so Tuesday, April 12th. And we always schedule multiple days for those hearings, though in urban renewal, we never take more than one night. So they will show up. You'll get a notice that we have multiple meeting days. That's only if you need it and if you want it, to allow enough time, though we actually never have used two days as far as I'm aware. And what I'll also say is that based on the outcome of the extra agenda item, the item that's will be led by Mr. Spots from the college, we may be requesting a short business meeting after the budget meeting on April 12th to consider some more action on his proposal. So more to come on that, but I wanted to let you know those are the upcoming schedules. But I'm looking forward to seeing you all. I'm looking around. I think a few of you I haven't met in person yet, so I'm looking forward to meeting you in person for the first time at our next month's meeting. That's all I have, Chair.
Great, thank you, Director Cannon. So do we have any board member comments or questions?
I have one brief question.
Yes.
Chair Long.
Yes.
Alice, what's the expected timing of the Brownfield Grant decision?
I think it'll be, I would expect we'll have a decision by May, and we'll have a grant agreement by June. It'll be pretty fast. So we want to be able to move. We can't get the money any sooner than July 1, but I want to have everything set up to where we can demo that building July 1 or very shortly thereafter. This construction season, in other words, I want to get it done. So,
Yeah, thanks a bunch.
yeah.
Any other board members have any questions or comments? All right. I'm trying to go a little slow because I want Tracy to get on here if at all possible. Okay, so we're going to go ahead into our action item and talk about the fiscal year 2022-2023 goals and priority projects.
I'll get started on that, Chair Long. This has become an annual tradition. This is Alice's second annual goal setting session with you. And the purpose in doing this is we have a very large budget committee that will convene in April. We have 18 members on our budget committee. And I think it's important that you as a board weigh in first about what our annual goals are that go into the budget, so I can report that out to the board as something you've already taken action on. And I started that last year, and a very high priority last year, as will continue to be this year, is wrapping up the strategic plan for the agency. And the reason we got that started, and I was very pleased to get it started in October, but I had to put that aside a little bit because I was asked by the city manager to lead the community vision project, the citywide community vision. And actually, we had a great meeting last week, a town hall meeting. We had about 120 participants, and some of you were there, and really pleased with the good feedback we received. So I think the outcome of that will help inform urban renewal and the council's goals in the coming years. We have a new city manager coming with interviews this week. So I think this will be an exciting time for the city. So I'm glad we put a pause on that to allow that project to inform this. So what I'm going to present to you, I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. I'm just going to go through, I'm looking at pages 2 through 4 in the packet. And so I'm going to talk to you. I don't think I need to talk to you about the highlights and accomplishments that we've had this year. You can read that there because I inform you that we meet about monthly. So you get to hear that on a pretty regular basis. I will be giving our newest member an orientation. So she'll hear from me a little bit more about what we've been doing. As far as the goals for the year, I have proposed that we have, number one, complete strategic planning for the agency, and especially as we look to wind down our activities in urban renewal in the next few years. This will be important that we have a good solid plan for doing that. And I want to finish that exercise that we started in the fall, and I want that to happen. I think the council will adopt the vision in May, and so it would be June, July, someplace in there. We'll finish this work up. Okay, and then the second goal would be to sell the third and final agency-owned storefront property for the rec building. I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Carpenter wrote a check for the 2 storefronts. We haven't closed on the property yet, but we have his money, and we'll be scheduling very soon the closing for that property. He has accomplished getting his final inspections from the county, and once he gets some tenants in place, he will finish up his tenant improvements and be ready to occupy. So now is a good time to transfer ownership over to Todd Carpenter and his partner, Carla McQuaid. So that will happen, and it will happen soon. That will be one of the first actions. I think he'll be finished. The milestone completion date for that third storefront is January of 2023, and it may be done sooner than that. He has his building permits, and he's going, he tells me. So the First Street Riverfront connection project, our goal there is to complete the design and finish the right-of-way easement acquisition phase and be out to bid in the coming fiscal year. I've been told that due to the extra work we've had to do around studying the basalt wall, the historic resource there, as well as the geotechnical work that we need to do for the fill material beneath the street, we may be pushing out construction from 23 into 2024. So I just wanted to tell you that. I'm a little disappointed about it, but I'm going to keep pushing ahead, and I'm really pleased with the progress the team has made. So we want to initiate and complete demolition of the agency-owned Tony's building at the northeast corner of 2nd and Federal Street. And the goal there, after we finish demolition, would be to dispose of that property in a very likely a public-private manner with a private developer. So it will really be up to this board how you want to do that. But if you want a stake in the outcome of what gets built there, then we would enter into an agreement, much like we've had with Mr. Carpenter on the recreation building. But we have time to talk about how we want to proceed with that as the demolition progresses and the work on that demolition progresses. Market, we hope to, by the end of this fiscal year, this spring, have a new incentive program, which will be the topic of our next agenda item. So we want to be heavily marketing that program. I'm really pleased that I'm seeing a few participants who are going to be future developers. A few of our meeting audience are going to be developing properties in the next few months. I think they'll be in for permits or to begin the process of planning their projects. I'm already meeting with 2 developers, and I know of 4 total that are interested in building in the next couple of years in the Dalles and downtown the Dalles. And that gives me a lot of hope about our future. So that is a big goal. And then, of course, we'll continue to track progress on the outstanding urban renewal loans that we have out on the Honnold building, the Gator building, and the Commodore 2 building. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or get any feedback you have about these proposed goals and add or subtract anything that you might want to. But the recommendation is that you move to accept the highlights and goals as written or as amended, and then make a motion so that we can include that in my presentation before the budget committee next month. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Director Cannon. Do any board members have any questions? No? Oh,
Chair
yes.
Long,
Yes, Paula?
Board Member Richardson has his hand up.
thank you. Board Member Richardson?
Thank you, Chair Long. I do have a question. I guess this is a question for all of us.
Excuse me, Mr. Richardson, could you speak up, please? We're not picking you up very well.
Yes, any better?
Yes.
A little bit.
Okay. Well, that's a first.
There you go.
Yeah, I do have a question, and I guess it's a question for all of us. And I apologize if this is putting you a little bit on the spot, Director Cannon, but I guess I'll beg forgiveness. I'm wondering if we could consider a 5th goal, which is starting design or thinking about designing or contracting for designing concepts for a Federal Street Plaza, which would be adjacent to the Tony site.
I would be open to that. I would, just in response to that, I'm fine with an addition. Very likely it'll happen later in the fiscal year, would be my recommendation, just because of the work that we want to make sure we're finished with the design and we've progressed on the Tony's project. So yeah, I'm fine with that set up as a goal if that's the will of the group here.
So we haven't actually discussed as a group creating a plaza. I know that it's coming up with visioning through the city, but I don't think that there's been any formal action taken to solidify that that is what's going to happen down there. So are you proposing, Board Member Richardson, that we solidify that here inside urban renewal? Or are you just saying that you want to be supportive of that when it comes forward and possibly use some urban renewal funding for it?
Well, yes. Whether it's an urban renewal or a city project, I guess doesn't matter terribly to me. It seemed to me that it was sort of fit naturally into the urban renewal mission. I would like to pursue it. I think it's a good project for us. And I'm not sure what the sort of proper pathway is to adopting that. I would like to discuss it, and having it as a goal to design would open up that discussion, presumably give us opportunity to hire a consultant or have a subcommittee that looks at it. Putting that as a goal to design would be a fairly modest amount of funding, presumably, and be the discussion without being committing to an expensive construction project.
Yes, Attorney Cara.
Thank you, Chair Long. I'm looking at the urban renewal plan right now, and I'm wondering if a Federal Street Plaza might not fit under the first enumerated project under the downtown streetscape improvements. It seems that the Federal Street Plaza is zoned centrist. I'm sorry, there's quite a bit of feedback. I'm not sure if anybody else can hear that, but
Can hear it. I don't know what it is.
I'm not sure what that is. But anyway, I can send an email to the group on this issue, but it appears, based off of very quick reading, that a Federal Street Plaza type project would fit squarely within the downtown streetscape improvement project, which is listed explicitly in the urban renewal plan #1, actually. So it might fit under there. There may not be a need to go through a formal adoption process. So long as the board is interested in exploring that, I think there's sufficient authorization already, but I'm more than happy to confirm this. And so I will.
Yes, Mr. Cara, that's true, that the original First Street project included a similar plaza on Washington Street. So the goal would be to do something similar, although move it to the Federal Street location. I, just in making a comment, completely agree with Chair Long that we really need to get our direction from the council about whether this is a priority, because we can build it, urban renewal can build it, but ultimately it will be built and maintained as a public space that will be inherited by the city council. So I think you could set up a goal that would be contingent upon it becoming a goal of the city council, and we could follow along with initiating some project. I know we had actually won in the fall of 2020, shortly after I arrived, we won a grant to do this design work. I wasn't in a position to accept that grant. It was too new, and I had to give it back. But I know there was a lot of support from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, I believe. So anyway, more to come on that, but we can certainly look into it if it rises up as a goal of the council.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. So thank you, Attorney Cara. And so Board Member Richardson, do you feel that because it is likely able to be included under an existing goal, so we don't have to amend the plan, because it is a little bit cumbersome to amend the plan for something that specific, can we just follow along? And then since you're also on city council, I think it's going to be pushed from that side, and maybe we could be a part of it, but not necessarily take it on as a sole project that urban renewal is a part of. That would also give us some potential funding from other sources. I know a lot of groups have been working on it already. Is that acceptable, or do you still want to push forward and have it be an urban renewal project that we are taking the lead on?
Well, it's a good question. I guess I feel like it would rise higher in the list of projects likely to get taken on if urban renewal had it on its list. And again, just a design phase contingent upon council direction. But, in the end, it doesn't really matter to me who does it, as long as we as a community can get moving on it, at least thinking about it, designing it, having that conversation. So.
Okay.
that's
All right.
my best answer.
Okay, so assuming that we're in the final phase of our 2020 visioning process with the city, and we expect that to be adopted by city council in the next month or two. I think Dr. Cannon said April, correct?
April or May.
April or May. And this actually brings up something I was going to mention later. Each of you as a member of this board will be receiving an email inviting you to participate in the third phase of the visioning project. It's a survey. I highly encourage you to participate and give your input there. Director Cannon, could we add this to an agenda after the visioning process is finished to revisit it as a board and talk about what role we want to play once we see how that how it shapes out and how it's coming along with the city, and then we as a board can discuss it and discuss how we would like to approach it for urban renewal?
That's fine. I'll just take whatever direction you give tonight.
Okay. Can I just get some general consensus from the board if that's okay, or is there anyone who does not want to discuss it? Okay, give me a thumbs up if it's okay to add it to the agenda later. Thumbs down if no. Okay, everybody's waving yes. Oh,
Well,
Kathy, are you?
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. Could you repeat?
Okay.
What are we thumbs upping on?
Oh, I just want to know if it's okay to bring it back to the Urban Renewal Board after the city visioning process is completed and approved by the city council, so that we for sure know what the city direction is on the plaza. I mean, I think we all kind of know, but we don't actually have our final. So that's why I was just kind of getting a consensus that it's okay to bring it back.
Well, I think that makes total sense, but part of me thinks it's a little cart before the horse, because we don't know what the development's going to be.
Okay.
This would be cool if we had a plaza there, but it's got to fit in with whatever is possibly going to be developed there. Those are my thoughts, but I don't know. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it would work, but as long as it works with, because like I said, we don't know what's going to go there. So.
Excellent point. And so we'll add it to the agenda, and that that actually should be one of the things that we're discussing and looking at is timing of that. But we'll discuss it after the visioning is done. We'll definitely put it back on the agenda so it doesn't fall through the cracks. Just be a couple more months and we'll get that formalized. Is that okay, Board Member Richardson?
I can live with that. Thank you.
Okay. I am really saying yes, but okay. Okay.
I hear that. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. We won't let it fall off the list. How's that? Okay. Any other comments or questions about this? So it is going to be an action item and we're going to need to vote on whether or not to accept it.
I do have another question.
Yes.
As always.
Great.
Director Cannon, can you just update me on what is the status of the Commodore? I'm always surprised when that keeps coming up, on our list, because it's been there forever. And can you do that now, or am I putting you on the spot?
No, I can tell you, Chair Long, I can answer this question and tell you what I know. I'm pleased to let you know that there is that the Commodore property owner is now up to date on their property tax. For a few years, they've been delinquent. They've needed to pay a substantial sum to the county. They've owed money on the property tax. We learned from the county assessor, Jill Amory, that they're up to date now. So that's good. That's good news. We have a grant where they make a loan on the property where they make annual payments. And I think they typically make those payments in April of each year. So soon we'll be getting a payment, I hope. And the other piece is the balloon payment is due in 2026, spring of 2026. So it's coming right
December-
up.
Sorry to interrupt. It's December 31st, 2026.
Okay.
So the very end of last day of the year.
Okay, so in that balloon payment amount is 268,000, I believe, somewhere around there. And then we'll be finished with our part of it. We have had some outreach from the property manager to meet, and I just haven't set that meeting up yet, but I hope to have an update. I've been disappointed, and I think you have been too, at times when the property doesn't look as good on the outside as it should. And that's one of the areas I hope to address. I did do a walkthrough, a few, just because the door was open and I walked through the property and it looked okay inside. So just for, I don't know about, I did not go inside any units, but I walked through the hallways and it looked worn, but it didn't look as bad as I thought it might inside. So I was pleased with that, but I think it would be good to have that property owner come and give us an update on what they're doing with the property and what future plans they might have for it.
I think that would be great, because it's not really clear to me what the property is currently used for. And it seems like the retail space has been empty forever, unless I just have missed it somehow driving by all the time. But do you have any sense of why that retail space just continues to be vacant?
No, I do not. This particular property, I know the very least about it of all the properties or projects I inherited here at the city. This is the one I know the least about, but I hope to get up to speed soon. And if you ask for me to put it on the agenda, I'll get up to speed. That's a good thing.
I would like that, but I will ask the chair's permission.
Yes.
That would be great. And then one other question, the visioning survey, did we already fill that out, some of us, or is this a new one? Because you sent one out a couple months ago as well. Same one?
This is a new one. Yes, it
Oh.
will be a new one, and it's in response to what we heard at the town hall. So
Okay.
it will be a survey, kind of a refinement, saying this is what we heard from the many people that attended. Are we on the right track? Asking for feedback on the kind of the final refined vision.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay, if not, I would take a motion. There's a suggested motion on page 4 of your packet to accept the fiscal year 2021-2022 highlights and the fiscal year 2022-2023 goals as written.
I'll move to accept the fiscal year 2021-2022 highlights and the fiscal year 2022-2023 goals as written.
Thank you, Chair, Member Coburn.
I'll
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Tracy.
Tracy seconded. All in favor, say aye or give a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed? Richardson is opposed? No? What?
Sorry, I thumbed it up and then I waved across the room to somebody else. Apologies.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay. All right.
Excuse me, Chair Long.
Yes.
If you could please have the board members physically raise their hands when they use the little thumbs up icon, it doesn't record.
Oh, okay. So physically thumbs up if you're in favor of the motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to be a pest.
All right. Nope, that's okay. We're all getting used to this, just in time to go back to in-person meetings. Woo! All right, so the motion passed. All right. Okay, so now we have our big discussion item. It is the incentive program, and we have some members of the public who are also going to be participating in this discussion as well. So just so the board members know that I am going to invite their feedback on this to help us get the best product possible. And board member Jamay it sort of straddles the line. She's a business owner, building owner downtown, and a board member. And so I would like to ask the board if it's okay if she participates in the discussion, but does not vote. So could you just, I hate putting you on the spot, but can you give me a thumbs up if that is acceptable, or if anyone has any concerns, you can certainly voice them now. Okay. All right. So Lindsay, it looks like we're good for you to discuss and not vote like we talked about. Okay. So Director Cannon, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Chair, members of the board, we are not, I didn't schedule this as an action item tonight, so it's just a discussion unless you decide you want to adopt it. We're scheduled to come back next month and have the final adoption. So that, unless you tell me otherwise, that was my plan for this evening. And as you know, on January 18th, we had a very good discussion where you gave your first bit of feedback on some research that our consultant provided to you. And Deb Myhoff is on the Zoom meeting here, and she has prepared this draft proposal for your consideration. She will present it. And I'm really pleased with this draft. And I'm also especially pleased that we had enough time to shop it around with 4 property owners who are likely to develop, and they're longtime property owners in the Dalles, and they've had experience with the weaknesses of the prior incentive program, and were able to give me some really good real-time feedback that we incorporated into this draft. So my thanks to them for taking the time and for giving us their very candid feedback on this. I did have a chance with Lindsay earlier this afternoon to do the same with her. So anyway, look forward to getting feedback, and I'm going to turn it over now to Deb Myhoff, who is our consultant who put this draft together for your consideration.
Hi, good evening, board members and chair. Thank you for having me again. I'm going to share my screen here. I thought I had it queued up. Let's make sure I do. No, that's my whole screen. You don't want to see all of that. Sorry, give me just 1 second. How is it that I'm still going this way? Okay, let's try it now. Okay, here we go. So I thought what might be helpful is just a quick recap about what our sort of main charge was here, highlights of the kind of proposed program, and then we can have a discussion about various details and such. So here we go. So just a reminder, I was asked to help Alice and her team develop some public incentives to achieve your urban renewal goals of adding to the tax base and addressing other community needs, and of course, adding to the vitality and prosperity of the Gateway and downtown. Let's see if I can get it to advance. There is policy guidance. As we mentioned last time, you have your urban renewal plan itself with goals and objectives, eligible projects, which you just covered some of those. Your comprehensive plan also has policies and goals that support the urban renewal of the area, and the urban renewal plan must follow. And then of course you have your housing needs projection and sort of a gap in housing availability in the city. So just a little recap of some items that we talked about last time, or sort of in my analysis of your existing programs, and then some of the things we talked about last time. But your current programs, I think you all know this well, are not widely used and can be rather burdensome for both the applicant and the city to figure out how to administer. And especially true as your urban renewal area may sunset here in the near future, sort of figuring out sort of long-term how you would administer programs. Some of your programs right now are sort of longer-term loan programs that would be difficult. And, you know, this has had the effect of making it slightly less attractive, or maybe a lot less attractive to developers and investors in your area if the programs aren't really clear and your mission isn't clear, and it's really burdensome to apply, and then it's a real risk whether they would even qualify. It becomes that much less attractive to to do the type of development you're looking for. So in our last conversation, your agenda packet has the notes from our discussion with details, but a couple of key takeaways were, look at finding ways to make the program simpler for the types of development you're really seeking in your urban renewal plan and where you are in redevelopment scheme overall now. And then and look for ways to make the incentives more attractive to that kind of development. Address the redevelopment challenges that remain in the urban renewal area, especially for vacant and underused properties. And underused could mean the whole property or portions of the property or upper floors of multi-story buildings, some of your older buildings. And then also look to increase activity and value in the area. On the right-hand side here are the list of your current programs, also in your packet, just as a little refresher. So we took that information. You might also recall, I didn't leave it in the presentation here, that we talked quite a bit about examples from around the state of Oregon, from communities of similar size or nature of your urban renewal area looking to do similar things and how they're attracting developers. So we took that analysis, we took your conversation and your guidance on that, and worked up sort of a new way forward, which is thinking about a redevelopment program as a whole, sort of a single whole, but it has 3 new incentive offerings within it, and everything sort of falls under these 3. So the first one, this is of course a proposal, draft proposal for discussion. The first one being for commercial projects. This could be anything from tenant improvement loan to a larger build out or a new building of a commercial project. Matching grant incentive or renewal area puts in 50% up to $50,000 of eligible expenditures. Mixed use project grants, so looking for more mixed use in the community, especially those that are adding some housing. You have a higher match, so you're willing to put in 70% of those projects, eligible project costs up to $150,000 for mixed use projects. And then new residential project grants, just net new housing units being created, $10,000 per unit of SDC credit. I'm sorry, it doesn't say that right here, but it's what it should say. And it's really an SDC buy down. It would be the urban renewal area purchasing or paying for the system development charges.
So Deb, I want to just add a few things on this. You have a slide on each program.
I do.
Okay, I'm going to let you go then. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. I will just, so that's the big bit. As I mentioned, commercial project, this is really aimed at the smaller, you might even remember some of the other communities had smaller grants and larger grants. Alice, you can fill them in on the color of our conversations on those. Like, I don't know, where do you divide smaller and larger? What we really realized is we were talking about sort of complexity of projects and complexity of the investment. So these commercial project grants are aimed at smaller building upgrades, tenant improvements, and similar, but it could be to a larger building. They wouldn't be precluded by any stretch. But again, 50% matching up to 50,000. And I mentioned eligible projects using tax increment financing necessitates funding go toward physical improvements or those activities that are leading to physical improvements. So you could pay for site surveys and design plans that are also leading to the development that you're helping compensate.
The main difference on this small commercial grant is that it's not mixed use, it's for commercial only. And when we think about one of our property owners who gave me some feedback, gave an example of a couple of incentive programs that are available in the state right now, and that is to incent restaurant development. So for instance, if you have a ground floor commercial space that wants to transform into a restaurant, there are some sizable costs that go into creating the space and making it available for that type of use. Grease traps, commercial hoods, commercial kitchen improvements, those sorts of things that the health department regulates heavily. So those types of improvements would fit right into that grant. And then the mixed use project, this next one we're going to talk about is maybe the use needs or wants to have an elevator in it, and those are costly. So that becomes a barrier to entry for redevelopment. So these mixed use projects really have 2 or more uses that they're trying to accommodate in them. That's the difference.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, it's even possible the way we've constructed this that you could have someone, let's say, rehabbing one of your older multi-story buildings, accessing your mixed use project grants, and they have a tenant a year from now that needs to build out their restaurant on the first floor. They could come and apply for the commercial project grant for that build out, presumably. Wouldn't be necessary, but something they could do. So thank you, Alice. You're right that this is really aimed toward those more transformational, and again, the complexity of mixing uses cannot be understated. Elevators being one of those. And then finally, any project adding new housing units to the urban renewal area under this proposed program would be eligible for up to $10,000 per new housing unit. So that'd have to be a net increase. And that $10,000 is paid through credit to the system development charges that the urban renewal agency would pay for. This one doesn't have a match because by the very nature of needing a system or being assessed a system development charge, you're putting in an improvement that for development that's triggering that need. And that would be applied at the time of building permit.
And I want to say this is not critical at all toward any of our partner agencies that are other taxing entities who are represented on this board. The highest SDC is by far for residential is by far the Parks and Recreation System Development Charge. And that is we hear folks talking about that a lot at our counter because we collect the funds for it. And when we issue building permits for new residential, and for that reason, some of these buildings will be exempt. We have an exemption in our code for transportation SDCs for redevelopment of downtown properties. And because there are existing pipes and existing buildings, the utility SDCs may be lower anyway because of that existing infrastructure that's already in place. But the big ticket item is the Parks and Recreation System Development Charge. And I think it's fair that urban renewal support that entity because it's an important part of our city. And so this is a way to support the development, but also support our partners with the Parks and Recreation District.
Yeah, and thank you, Alice. Your description reminds me that it's probably good just to recap. System development charges are a charge that the city assesses on new investment that's putting additional use on water, stormwater, sewer, parks, as Alice just mentioned. And those monies get collected and then are used to expand or build those utilities or park system or what have you. So just to recap, and I think at the last meeting, Alice, I think you'd done some assessment about generally what SDCs are running, and it's somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 per unit. So we pegged this at 10,000, and of course that would only be 10,000 per new unit as budget is available for all of these. So a couple of other just smaller details that are in the finer print of the proposal. We, at the very beginning at the very top of the program proposal in your packet, you'll see there's some priorities for people applying for these incentives, sort of what you would be looking for to see. It's your way of telling the development and investment community, this is what we're looking for, this is what we want to invest in. We've put in some straw man proposals, if you will, about that based on our prior discussion, your urban renewal plan, your annual goals. But you could, of course, adjust those as they are now. You could also choose to do that on an annual basis as you're doing your annual goal setting. You might just review those and make sure they're still targeted at the right development types. A couple of other important things we're testing with you here this evening. We did talk about last time about excluding tax exempt projects and uses from eligibility from the program. We also had a discussion about what to do with vertical housing tax abatement zone projects, and have proposed here to go ahead and allow those projects, those mixed use projects, they have to be mixed use to take advantage of the vertical housing tax abatement, to allow them to go ahead and also be eligible for these incentive programs, because the desired development is the same. And it will help amplify your funding if they can also access the vertical housing tax abatement. Those are 10-year abatements, and it depends on how many floors of housing they're developing as to what that abatement is. But it's not 100%, it's only up to 80%. And then we have also proposed that grants can be combined. So as I mentioned, your 3 sort of incentive grant programs could be combined in some sort of form if it meets the eligibility and rules of your program. They could also combine other funding they're receiving from the City of the Dalles with your program, but we've suggested that there should be a maximum cap, like all in between the agency and the city, a cap of $700,000 in your city and urban renewal programs. We can talk about whether that feels about right to you. And Alice will fill you in here on some of the feedback she received on that. And then, as I already mentioned, tenant improvements, storefront rehabs, the current programs you have around fire suppression systems, the desire for elevators, other interior small investments are still absolutely eligible under these programs. And then they just have to sort of be meeting that desired outcome. And then a really important piece, which is really simplifying the application process. It's a single application. Anyone wanting to access any of these programs would use the same. There might be a little more information you'd ask for some of the larger projects, but all the same, just streamlining that. So Alice, you want to fill them in on some of the things you've heard?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we reached out to now 4. When we wrote these bullet points earlier this afternoon, there were only 3, and now I've reached Ms. Jamay, board member Jamay as well, to get her feedback. So everyone that I reached out to has developed and has been a property owner for multiple years and has experience working in the Dalles. So that was good and very helpful. So they saw the limits of what was possible with the prior program, with the current program, I'll say. Just one of the questions that came up that I'll just throw out was a question of whether these grants, use of the grants could be used for things such as archaeological assessments that are needed prior to grading property. And yes, the answer is yes. There were questions about combining funds and whether that was possible and what the caps were. We took the cap and bumped it up. The original proposal, actually all the grants except for the commercial grant have gone up at our recommendation after getting feedback from the property owners, but also just studying a little, getting some refined look at some other programs. And I think our market here is weak enough. Our downtown market isn't as strong as other downtowns. And so we really, adding more funds into the mix is going to be super helpful, I think. And that's the feedback we're getting from property owners. What I will tell you is that we set the amount at $700,000, not really knowing how the board would react to that. We kept it, we put a cap on it because what we've heard, and you may be aware of this, is that there is a maximum amount that the city can contribute, up to $750,000 toward a development. Anything above that triggers the need to pay the prevailing wages that are considerably higher for government type projects. So we kept it below that amount. I did have a conversation with one of your colleagues, a board member earlier this week, who asked, why do we need a cap? And so I think you need to talk about that. You need to talk about what is the appropriate cap, if any, and what kind of goals might you have for, what kind of goals are you hoping to achieve for a cap? What I'll tell you right now is that in your proposed budget, and I think it's too late for me to suggest a change, but you'll be able to comment on that. I didn't really know. I put a placeholder number in the proposed budget that you'll see next month, and you'll see that I proposed $250,000 for the grant program. Why did I set it at that amount? I only did because we've budgeted in previous years $60,000, and I thought, well, I don't think I can get away with more than 10 times that. So I proposed 4 times that. I expect that the demand for these funds will be greater than 250,000 in the first year. And so I think we'll have to come back for a amended budget, or next month you can say, Alice, we want more money to be put into this program for the proposed budget. That's something you can comment on. So with that, I did get a lot of compliments, and I would invite you to ask the property owners who are on the call to give you their own comments, but I got a lot of really good comments that people felt like this was very thoughtful and well, that it was a good proposal. So, but don't believe me, ask them. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you. And then I just have one last slide, I don't need to keep this up here, but did I get there? I did. No, it's not advancing for some reason. Here we go. It's really just discussion questions, which are not all that magnanimous, but whether you have questions or comments, of course, on the proposed program itself, and whether you feel like we really struck the right balance between that sort of administrative efficiency and effectiveness of getting the desired outcomes you would like from this investment. And then, of course, what can we do to make this better? And if you all don't mind, I would like to stop sharing just so I can see what's happening, because in presentation mode, I can't see anything. Are you okay with that, Alice?
Director Cannon.
Yes, and I have one more point I wanted to emphasize,
Yes.
and thank you, Deb. This was very helpful. With this proposal, we are emphasizing property owners that are paying property tax. We are trying to get away from those properties that awarding money to those properties that are tax exempt. The only tax exempt program that will allow to also receive urban renewal funds will be those that are associated with the vertical housing tax program that has been previously adopted, though it's only in use by one property owner at this time. And what that program does is it gives a 10-year abatement to residential vertical development, so second level, third level, fourth level housing that's built above a ground floor commercial. And it's an 80%, up to 80% tax abatement for up to 10 years. It doesn't go beyond 10 years. So we thought that was a good package of incentive programs to bundle together with the grant. But going beyond that doesn't necessarily, it was staff's opinion that doesn't necessarily get to what we're all hoping to do when we're done with urban renewals, have all votes rise for revenues coming into all the taxing entities, and have more property values, higher property values, and more prosperity in our downtown. So with that, I just would welcome any comments and questions you have, but also ask that you have any property owners and those who are on the meeting who might want to add comments, make sure you listen to them too.
Thank you. All right, so since this is a discussion item and the goal is to come up with the best product possible, what I'd like to do is call on board members first, and then cycle in members of the community as well, so we can have the discussion going back and forth. So you can either raise your hand with the icon on the screen, or physically raise your hand. I can see everybody except those on the phone. So I guess if you're on the phone, you can just let me know, say something so I know to call on you. So questions, comments, feedback? Anyone want to kick it off?
I have a question.
Yes.
If we have the funds on hand and we're excited about spending them, why set a low bar for the budget? Why go with 250 for the budget as opposed to, I don't know, something more ambitious?
Chair Long and Board Member Richardson, I did not have this draft in front of me when I proposed the budget. So I did that several weeks ago, and I was a little bit shy about suggesting a big number when I didn't know what this draft looked like. So that it was only just being conservative and not, I didn't know if, without having this draft in front of me, I didn't know what you would say about me suggesting $1 million or $2 million or something like that for the grant program. Though I strongly encourage you to tell me next month that, or make an adjustment to the budget to add more funds to that line item.
Thank
And
you.
Director Cannon, I realize we don't have the budget in front of us yet, but where would be the most obvious place to move money within the budget? So what line item is it currently sitting in that you think would make sense to move it into this?
We have and those of you that have been on the board for a while know this, we have a line item that's called future projects, future opportunity projects. And that's where the remaining funds go, the unappropriated. They're appropriated, they're just appropriated for future projects. So you could say, let's take some funds out of that and put them into the grant line. And that would be perfectly fine.
Okay. And in the past, sometimes going into budget, we've had commitments from prior votes or whatever that we needed to hold back. Do we know the amount that we need to hold back in the future projects, if any, when we propose maybe moving some more to incentive program?
I have all the proposed line items listed. So for instance, your commitment you made to fund a grant match for the North Wasco. I keep wanting to call it North Clackamas Parks District, and that's not right. North Wasco Parks District, that entity, you made a commitment last year of $300,000. And that is in a line item this year. So all the funds, you'll be able to see everything that's proposed, and then everything that is not proposed goes into that future projects line.
Okay, great. So when you guys get your budget book per se, or are you emailing it, or are you giving them hard copies this time?
I think, Paula, I think we do both, if I remember right.
I think that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Typically, they're sent out by the finance department.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Okay, so you guys know to take a look at that. If you want to give some specific feedback on that line item, we'll be looking for that. Any other questions, feedback? Yes, Lindsay.
So
sorry, board member Gamay.
Then the same point on the budget that's available, then I guess my only concern would be to make sure that a number of property owners would be able to take advantage of it, and there's not just like one person that gets all of the funds. So even hearing that limit of 700,000, I know there's proposals of larger residential units going in. I guess my concern is that they would get like all of the funds, and I'd rather see that number lower so that we could all get potentially like a little, it could be spread the money through a number of property owners. And I think that would be helpful.
My response to that, when others have asked that question, is that I feel pretty confident that all of you on this, all of you that are participating will get the funds you request, even if we have to adjust the budget. Where it will come up short is when we get toward the end of the life of the district. So all of you that are getting ready to develop, I think we're going to want to support you to the maximum that we can. But you make a good point about making sure that the money is spread properly. So that might be a good reason, might be one reason to adjust the cap. Though I feel like this group would be supportive of making budget amendments to support projects, at least in the initial years.
I had a question. So
Yes.
if we know, you just mentioned that, the people on the call or on the meeting today will want to be requesting funds. So if we how will we know what amount to suggest to adjust the budget? Would it be, is there any way that we kind of have an idea of what is going to be requested, or?
Yeah, I will take a stab at a number because I know generally with all the folks on this meeting what their program is, what they're going to be proposing. So I will be able to do a pretty good estimate on a good first draft number, second draft number.
Yeah, and I would say also, basically, I think what we're looking at is, are we willing, if we have a lot of projects that want to get going this year, do we want to fund them all and just have less money to fund as the program is sunsetting? If our cash flow is good, we don't necessarily have to limit, but it's up to us how much money we move into that line item, because it is there. It's either going to sit there and not get used or get used now. So, it's a good question, Tracy. It is. And part of the reason that cap is so high, is it not, Director Cannon, that with the vertical housing, the $10,000 per unit, is that playing into that? No. Deb's shaking her head no. Okay. So
No,
it's just
that
the
tax
other
exemption is exempt from being counted against the $750,000. I mean, it would be under the 700, if you set 700, but not from the prevailing wage requirement.
Okay. All right. Shannon, I'm sorry. Board Member Saldivar, I saw you raising your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question. If we know, where are the new businesses that are popping up downtown coming from? And if this program would help incentivize more folks like those who are already starting businesses downtown would want to do.
Great question.
I mean, fortunately, all the people that I know are going to invest are locals, and they're people that have owned their properties for a while, and they have local businesses or new businesses that they want to start, and tourist-oriented businesses or makerspace, new retail opportunities, that sort of thing, or new housing opportunities for a segment of the market. So it's all local so far. We don't have any that are proposed at this time from outside entities, though I think the buzz is going to be out there definitely once people start talking more about their projects in the Dalles. There will be folks coming from other places to develop it. So far, it's all local.
Do any of the potential program participants want to address Member Saldivar's question, or maybe make a comment on that from how you see this from your perspective?
I'd love to respond. This is Mary
Excuse
Hamlin.
me.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm just on phone.
They're long. They
Yes.
need to state their name and address for the record.
Okay. Mary Hanlon, will you please state your name and address for the record?
Okay. The business address, or
That's fine. Yes.
That's fine.
The business address is 523 East 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think some of you know that we're trying to build housing. We bought a property in 2017 with the intention of building some multifamily housing, some apartments downtown, just because that's what we focus on, and it has a major effect on economic and community redevelopment. And we have not been able to get something going for a while for a few reasons. So now, 5 years later, construction costs are about $55 a square foot more than they used to be. And so I guess I would just respond to the one comment about, a couple things. One is the ceiling. We did a project like this as a public-private partnership with the city of Canby, which included land, a financial contribution, and the SDC waiver. And I would say that, here, I don't know if that $700,000 ceiling is SDCs and a grant, one or the other, but it's a possibility. It's open for both. It's my understanding SDCs don't, if it's a waiver, that it's not attributed to the cap that's set by the state. So just we really believe strongly that putting more people downtown would just do a tremendous amount to activate the downtown, and it'll support all of the other businesses that are there as well. the vertical housing tax credit is for putting in the housing. We dramatically increase with ground floor retail the amount of taxes that are collected over what are collected today, even if we did get the vertical housing tax credit. And in response to the comment about being concerned that that there were, I don't know what the budget is downtown, but I would suggest that if it were considered a percentage of the cost versus, just a flat dollar amount, I know that what we're looking at are some pretty daunting numbers to try to get the housing built. And again, the dollar per square foot is pretty high to get that housing down there. And we think it'll benefit all of the businesses down there. I don't know if that was helpful. If you have any more specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mary. So Director Cannon, we are not actually doing SDC waivers. Is that correct? Because we are actually paying them so that like Parks and Rec will have their money, right? So we're not waiving it. We're paying it out of our budget.
Yeah, this proposal is not suggesting that the council waive any fees. It's to subsidize those fees on behalf of the developer. And I don't know what the semantics of that are, Mary, but I do know that we need to be responsible and pay those fees. Waiving them isn't a policy option that we've talked about thus far, and I don't think it would be a popular notion, though. If that's the will of the board, we can certainly talk to the city council and the city organization about that.
And she does bring up a good point, though, about construction costs being so much higher. I think we've all been seeing that in the news. And when the Tony's Building original project was downtown, we were having, not everyone was on the board then, they were having trouble making it pencil out. And so one of the things that I talked with Director Cannon about was I was concerned if we put a cap on it that we might have a project that we really supported and really felt was worthwhile to have downtown, but not be able to assist them enough to help it pencil out. Not saying that we would always go full on, but we just want people to be able to ask for what they need. So are there any other? Mary?
Could I just comment? Sorry, another comment on the SDC waivers. The SDCs are extremely high in the Dells compared to other communities. And so if there's a cap on that, there's still a pretty heavy fee to pay, and else in response to kind of fairness and the ability to kind of create the cash and the equity to put back into the system. I think the idea is that if you bring, another 100 people living downtown, let's say, plus or minus, if you had for every dollar that's spent downtown and for every resident, you're able to kind of create, like as you've suggested, in a transit-oriented way where they're not kind of putting a heavy burden on the roads and things like that. That I believe, I don't know the number, and maybe Deb has one, but I think for every dollar spent in rent in downtown, another 3 will be spent on other resources locally. And so you are dramatically increasing the revenue base that will repay those funds that are contributed fairly quickly.
Great.
Other comments, feedback? Yes, Member Bailey?
The only question or regard that I have is if Deb would share her PowerPoints, that would be great.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Of course.
Yes.
And I'm trying to get online now. I was in transit, and I'm having trouble getting accepted to this Zoom meeting from my computer.
Yeah, Paula's probably wasn't watching for that. So
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Schwartz?
Well, I'm way past worrying about dumb questions. So in my job now, so I'm gonna just put it out there. So these SDC charges per unit, what exactly does that mean? Is that per unit of housing, or one? Like if you build 30 apartments, is that 10,000 per apartment, or is it just It is.
Per dwelling unit, that's what we mean when we say per unit, it would be per dwelling unit, yes.
Oh, that is expensive. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Board Member Jemay and then Board Member Richardson.
Just one more question. I know we ran into, outside of the SDCs, having to upgrade water lines in order to, if we were to put residential on the second floor, the lines aren't large enough, and it would be a costly piece. Is any of that, for what has been proposed, could be something we could get some help with?
Yes. Yes, it qualifies. Infrastructure improvements qualify for grant awards.
Okay, and I just want to, guys, don't say one more question. Like, I want a good discussion on this because this is important to downtown. This is important to our urban renewal. We're looking for some big, obvious wins. We want the public to know that we're taking this very seriously and that we are working to improve our downtown. And I feel like we could make a big leap forward in the next 1 to 2 years. So let's not hold back. Let's ask the questions that we have to ask and let's figure out how to push this forward. Member Richardson?
Okay, thank you. Director Cannon, do you recall roughly how much money we would have in total to appropriate over the next number of years for these incentives? Ballpark.
I can't, so let me answer that if at the last meeting, we did an update to your financial plan, and what we are projecting is that at the end of this fiscal year, we'll have 9.2 million remaining. And if you approve all the expenditures at the current levels that I propose, that includes the $250,000, we'll have about 7 million left. So that means, what that means for you as we do our strategic plan is you'll have to set some priorities. Like, do you want to focus on grants heavily and throw money at projects that are going to be built? That's my bias. I think that if we know these developers are lining up and want to develop, and we subsidize them, we're going to get some return on our investment if we set the criteria properly. That's guaranteed. You don't necessarily get return on investment for supporting nonprofit uses or even infrastructure improvements. You don't necessarily get those. So, but you would get it with new development. The property value will go up. So it's really a priority question for you. So after this proposed fiscal year, there will be between 6 and 7 million left. So it's really a matter of priorities. And if you want to hear my opinion is go bullish on the grants in the final years. I think it's going to be important to establish some return on investment for all of our good work in urban renewal.
Let me follow up since I've got you. I would like to hear your thoughts, your sort of professional opinion on whether we should consider incentivizing local residents over people who are looking, who aren't from the area, who are looking around, they have excess capital, what a problem, and decide Dells is a good bet.
Actually, that's a good question, and I'm looking over at Deb because Deb Myhoff, because we had a prohibition in an earlier draft. We prohibited national chains from qualifying, and we decided to remove that because who's to say that a national chain? I didn't want to come out looking judgmental. Though, if you wanted to qualify, put some qualifications on this, you could. I guess for me, if you're asking my opinion, and you are, I think on this first year, I think we ought to see what happens. And then if we want to put some limits next year, we'll have a little bit more experience under our belt and can set some limits that seem right for us at the time. Though I don't want to bias your discussion here today. You asked my opinion, and that's what I followed up with.
No, it's time to start, as Darcy, as Chair Long said, it's time to sort of get into the meat and the potatoes. And we have some money, but we only have so much money. And I guess maybe I'm just simple in this way, but I would prefer to spend money that if I had my druthers went to local people making the investment, not as a way to bar, to bar others, but just, I guess I would be inclined to prefer local residents, whatever the definition of local is. And I want your opinion. I want people who have been thinking about these things for a while to give serious thought and response.
I think if we had more, if our downtown was more popular than it is, I would say yes. But I don't think, I just don't think our market is strong enough to put those kinds of exclusions up at this time. Though you can probably convince me of the other side of that argument easily.
Member Saldivar? And then Deb, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
There'll be a process where whatever proposals come in will be scored, correct? So we could just wait, maybe locals a little bit heavier than non-locals in the process. So we could still not exclude people from participating, but heavily weighted a little bit more towards local folks.
Absolutely. Good idea.
Deb?
Thank you for voicing that. I was just about to suggest the exact same thing. I mean, you could even state, you'll give first preference or higher priority review, or, there's lots of ways to do that. I think I would be really clear what it is. I mean, I know you're just entering this conversation, but you'll give higher priority to businesses based in the Dalles or Wasco County, or, sort of what is that sphere that you're seeking. I think there's some logic to thinking about saying you would give priority to businesses based in the Dalles and Wasco County first, just because those investments are coming back to you in multiple fold that way, but that's just a consideration.
So my question would be, how would that affect someone like, say, Todd Carpenter or Tony Zilka, right? Originally, you guys came from out of the area, but now you're here.
You have to set up some residency requirements or something.
I didn't know if you were asking a non-board member to talk. So.
Yes, I am asking non-board members to talk.
So
no wonder you were quiet. I should have known.
For Paula, do I need to say my name, Paula?
Yes, please.
Todd Carpenter, 216 East 5th Street, Dalles, Oregon. I mean, I have mixed feelings about that too, because I think what would be nice is to have, so we have generational property, right? We have property here with owners who has been passed down over generations. And it would be really nice to see those properties kept in the generations. A lot of times those guys aren't developers, or guys and ladies aren't developers, don't know the first thing about it. Their buildings are sitting empty downtown. There's probably 200 to 300 vertical housing units downtown. And it'd be nice if they were able to get a developer from out of town to help them, but retain ownership of that. So if there's a way we could do that, I think that would be kind of cool. I did want to kind of mention, I have some experience, real world experience in the rec center with, some issues with structural integrity, hazardous waste material, engineering and architectural services, and demolition of creative building and structural materials that have gone on over the years that have had to been fixed and removed. And it's super costly. And so to go into, we're looking, just to be transparent, in November, I was at $600,000 for those 2 east buildings. And we're not even close to being done on 2 of the floors in the ice cream shop, maybe 50% done. So to do all that work, then the $200,000 grant helped, from the state of Oregon. But to do all that work and then have STC fees and all that stuff, it's really kind of prohibits you from even thinking about doing a project like that. Carl and I are doing it because we really love the area and love the projects and want to see the downtown revitalized. But when I think about Last Stop And what I really want to do, which is, build out infrastructure or rooms upstairs for service industry people or for partially. And I look at that and the cost of that with elevator, with brand new sprinkler system, with SDC fees, I go, and also hazardous waste, well, we just removed the hazardous waste there, but with demolition and some of the structural things that we'll probably have to do there as well. I go, shoot, is it really worth doing? Or I don't say that, Carla does. No, we both do. But so this program is I think it's pretty great. I think you'll get a lot of interest, and hopefully we can, create those 200 to 300 units downtown, and bring in some outside money to help with that, but hopefully retain that for local generational, building owners.
Board Member Bailey.
As a longtime yokel, I do support the local as well, but I also am kind of putting it more of a priority of what Lindsay said. Spreading the wealth seems more of a restriction to me. I'd hate to see one project eat up the rest of our funds versus spreading it amongst several projects. So although I am in agreement, Dan, that our locals have maybe a priority setting, I'd be more willing to spread the wealth is where I would restrict funds.
I like that, Diana. Thank you.
I don't know if sorry, this is Todd again. I don't know if there's an option to maybe, something that I've kind of talked to Director Cannon about, is that right? Is, building a blueprint, an A to Z blueprint that includes not only, urban renewal grants, if that happens, but, the PUD grant that's out there for the hazardous waste, the MCED, development money, and the help that they give, to from conception to build out to moving it into a mortgage company, and sort of creating, an A to Z blueprint that we could just pass on to building owners that don't have development experience and sort of hold their hand through the process. It's something that I would like to do. It's something that I'm kind of trying to document what we're doing, but I don't know if that's in the scope of this, this board's purview, but I think that would really help the generational owners. And again, if they can attract some funding from outside but retain ownership somehow, I don't know how you would do that, but I think that would be beneficial to the community.
Thank you. Board Member Coburn.
I was just going to agree with what Member Bailey mentioned, as well as others earlier, that I would rather see us spread the wealth a little bit. There's a finite amount of money at some point. We're kind of on this downhill slide here, and wanting to wrap things up. And if and when possible, if we can help, a few more extra people along the way and extra businesses, I think that's truly valuable. And I would also be interested in seeing some language included that specifically states that we're going to at least weight more heavily local folks for the pure reason of, hopefully that money continues to stay in the community and fosters other investments in the community. And I think that's super valuable as well to our little area here.
Thank you, Stacy.
Stacy, when you say, when you and Diana say spread the wealth, you guys mean lowering the cap so that we have more to.
Right. That's what I had in mind. I won't speak for Diana, but yes, and I think that was mentioned earlier as well. With the few $1 million, I know that's a lot of money, but that could go really quickly. And I just would like to make sure that we, if we were at the beginning of our existence here and had millions and millions of dollars to spend, that would be one thing. But it seems like at some point here we need to.
Do you guys have a cap in mind that you'd be more comfortable with?
I'd actually like to see the projects that Alice has sitting on the table right now, so that we can kind of get a better idea where we're sitting. I mean, none of us.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful as well, but I guess in my mind, that was one of the areas I circled when I read through this. I was thinking something closer to 400 or 500 as opposed to 7.
So Director Cannon, since our next meeting will be the budget meeting, could you send this information out to us via email so that the group can be thinking about it? I don't think that's something we want to drop on people like at the meeting or at the same time we drop that big old budget book.
Yes, I can add it to a staff report. Yes, I
Okay.
can do that.
Can I say something about the cap?
Yes, Todd.
So I sort of imagine, based on the limitations of 150,000, 50,000, and then the 90,000 on the SDC charges, that you're gonna have a project come in. So say last stop, the residential unit. I got 9 residential units upstairs that we're planning right now. The architect just sent me over the final, close to the final architectural drawings. So 9 units. Your build out's going to be 1.5 million, probably somewhere, maybe even more than that. You've got a project limit of 150,000. So that project limit is the build out of the hotel, right? You've got the STC fees, $90,000. So that's $240,000. So you're talking about a 2-year project of maybe 300,000 max. But then if somebody comes into the unit in year 4 or year 5 and this committee has money to spare, all of a sudden that building doesn't qualify for any other grants, maybe for tenant improvements or for street frontage or for something else that may be beneficial to the community. You've kind of removed them, you've removed them off the list. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you do get more money, you're basically your cap is not for year 1 or year 2. It's for the life of the urban renewal district. So I can't imagine anybody based on the subcategories. I can't imagine somebody coming in and doing a build out year 1 and then going back and asking for another 150,000 year 2 and another 150,000 year 3. So your cap is really over the life of urban renewal. It's not over the you're not giving somebody $750,000 that first year or first 2 years. In my mind, that's doesn't seem like that's how it's written.
There will be one project there is one property owner that's participating tonight that could qualify for that full amount. So I just say that it depends on the scale of the project. Those that are building more units are going to qualify for more funding. So the scale of Tony Zilka's project, for instance, is going to be very different than the scale of Mary Hanlon's project, just different. And I don't think anybody would argue with that. It's just she's got a heavier proposal. She's got a bigger property and a heavier proposal for residential units.
Mary, did you want to address that? And then we'll go to Member Bailey.
Yeah, I would just add that, if we want apartment buildings downtown, there's got to be a way to kind of tack new construction to tackle the cost. If you do new construction, it signals a lot of development. It can signal that the town is ready to support that. And it is extremely expensive. So if we want to do, 4 stories of housing, this would not make a dent in it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And I think that's a challenge for us as board members is we're not developers and we don't know what these big numbers are. And to us, 250,000 is probably more than most people in the Dallas have in their retirement account that they've saved their whole life for. And that's entirely different when you're looking at a building something. With the other project, we were looking at putting in 1.1 million in order to help make that pencil out. And so I would, although we do want to spread our funds around, I think more of my question would be is what do we want that downtown to be? And how do we get that money to the people that are going to do what we want and make that happen? So sorry.
Could I,
Board Member Bailey.
sorry to interrupt. I know you want to get to the other council member, and I apologize for interrupting. I think one thing that might be educational is at the 1.2, I don't know what was involved, but if you use the Tony's building as an example, I don't know if the 1.2 included also the land and the legal, you know, I mean, if you kind of go through the numbers for the Tony's building, that might be an educational experience for people, and as well as something that would give context to this.
Thank you. Okay, Board Member Bailey.
I was just curious if in the life of the urban renewal, has anybody considered like using a percentage of the project anticipated cost and back down from that direction?
That's something that Mary Hanlon had suggested earlier in her testimony. So that could be an option that we look at. One piece of direction you could give us tonight is, hey, can you look at this idea, and we can have Deb and I go and do some research and come back with options.
Okay.
I apologize for the repeat because I could barely hear her. So I apologize for that.
No, this is a lot of information that we're talking about. A lot of it's new to all of us. I think, you know, we may need to hear it a couple of times before we all grasp it, or we're catching pieces of it and putting it together like a big puzzle. So no question's a dumb question. Let's figure it out. Anybody else?
It's worth taking our time and reflecting on this.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question, and if it's tangential, Director Cannon, I want you to say, table it, and I will come and talk with you later. But I'm wondering about when it would be appropriate to discuss the possibility of basically a dark windows ordinance, basically an incentive to get people that are holding property to act, as well as incentives to help people who've already decided to act. Is that appropriate, or is that kind of too much at this point?
I think that's what you're doing right now with incentives. You're not a dark window ordinance is, the way I've understood it, is kind of a stick approach. It's not the carrot, it's the stick. You're fining people, that at least where I've heard about this. You're giving people penalties if they keep their properties vacant or not lively, their storefronts vacant. But this program, this grant program, is incenting people to develop and invest in their properties, and that will get the same desired result. Unless I'm not personally in favor of having a dark window ordinance, because I don't want to be asked to, one that would be punitive. I don't want to be responsible for enforcing that. That to me is too hard, and I would not be popular, and it wouldn't be very satisfying for my job to have to be punitive for people who might, for a struggling economy. But if we can give money away and get the same result, I'm in favor of that. Does that make sense?
Perhaps we could go at it a little bit differently, but maybe we could do a mailing with the new incentive program, especially to the out of town building owners, just to make sure, you know, owner of record or something, just to make sure that they know that there's new incentives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're not watching the local news. Board Member Bailey, were you raising your hand again? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a major shift gear, so I was going to let the conversation keep going. But Deb, on your slide number 9, I just needed further clarification on the up to 80%, or was it 80% of tax for
the vertical housing.
Correct.
Tax zones. The tax abatement program, which is authorized by the state, so we don't have a choice about that, but is up to 80% abatement of the property tax.
Okay, and who exactly, which organization is it, the state that makes that determination?
It's set in statute. It's 20% per floor of housing, and there's a little formula for how you determine what that value is, but it's above the ground floor. So ground floor can't be abated, whatever the ground floor is. It's because it's trying to encourage that's the vertical part. Floors 2 through 4. So up to 4 floors, for each floor of housing you add, you get a 20% abatement. I'm simplifying how the math works. Mary can probably tell you it's not quite that simple. So yeah, if somebody builds a 4-story building, they get 80% property tax abatement for up to 10 years.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? Kathy?
Yeah, hi. Well, it's probably not very popular, and I'm just going to throw it out there as just maybe a little divergent view around prioritizing local. And I'm just throwing it out there just for thought. I'm not really landing on this opinion myself, but I've lived in this town for a long time, and I've seen this community downtown kind of start to flourish, and then something happens and it goes down, and then it kind of picks up again, and then it goes down. And you hear a lot about this community, that there's great potential here, and so, I'm kind of thinking that, I'm in favor of whatever comes in from whomever, as long as it meets our goals, which are to get things back on the tax rolls, to improve, the businesses, to get the blight removed, to do housing. And again, we're a small county. I mean, we have a small population. These projects are big, they're hard, especially the housing ones that we're hearing about. And so I'm thinking we ought to just make sure we don't restrict ourselves to prioritizing local owners, but having a really open mind, and really, as someone said earlier, looking at each project's merits and how each project will meet our goals. So
I appreciate your views, Kathy. I don't know if you were speaking to me or just generally, but
no, just generally. I think just generally, for sure. Just throwing it out there as really wanting to see some things get started. And if it takes an outside interest, that we shouldn't necessarily put it further down the list, maybe officially further down the list.
Look, I have no hard and fast. I just want to say this. I don't have any hard and fast opinions. I took this as a discussion, and so I was throwing out questions that have been on my mind, and I'm kind of split opinion myself. I want all of the cake, and I want to have some slices out of it. So, at any rate, thanks for your views.
Let me give an example of a local. Well, I can give an example of someone who's on this meeting. Mr. Zilka has 5 brothers, and there are several brothers that live right in town here. And I don't know if Tony lives here full-time or part-time, but he does have a company that does a lot of work in the Portland area, and he does a lot of work in the Dalles. So what would define him as local? He owns 2 or 3 properties in the city of the Dalles. So is he local or not? That's a question. And then also I want to tell a story. The Craig building, is it the Craig building that's on the northwest corner, of Federal and 2nd Street, just sold, and it was formerly owned by an entity that was represented by Gary Rains, and it was sold to a property owner, as far as I have heard, that has started a vineyard in 3 Mile Vineyard, I think it's called. And that property owner operates a company based out of Wilsonville, but they are bullish on the Dalles, and they have a vineyard that they've had for several years. The owner of that company, however, might be out of Portland, and the ownership might be a Portland address, because they have a wine distribution business that is based out of Portland, but they're going to bring some of those operations to that building in the future, and they want to have a grab and go gourmet market there. So are they local or not? I think when I look at their video, they are touting the Dalles more than anyone I've seen in years. They're talking about how this is such favorable wine country. So it really makes me proud that they bought this property and they want to bring some of their business here. Are they local or not? I don't know. But anyway, I just tell you that because I think it's really hard to define what local is and what it isn't. So anyway, thank you.
Yep, so I want to thank Board Member Richardson for bringing that forward. And I think this is a very good discussion. And I think if there are other people holding back any questions or thoughts because you don't know how everybody's going to react, let's just put it out there. We're all kind here. We all understand we're just trying to get to the best product. And so we have one more project that I want to discuss before the meeting's over, the Columbia Gorge Community College project. But is there anybody else who wants to make any comments or ask any other questions on these incentives?
This is Tracy. I just want to make a comment that I appreciate the discussion because as everybody's talking, I'm kind of going back and forth, but I think what I kind of have come to is that you're right. We want what's best for the Dalles. Does it mean bringing in? Sure, we want to support local people, and I think that can. I think we can do both. I think we can support local people, but I think at the same time, I think bringing new ideas, new people, new money into the Dalles is also a good. I don't think we should limit or restrict just because someone is from out of town. So I think we should be considering all options. So, but I appreciate it's been a great discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Zilka? You're on mute. Oh, are you getting it?
I've been listening, and I've just really.
Excuse me, Mr. Zilka, I need your name and address.
Sorry. Tony Zilka, 205 Washington. I also have a resident on 7th Street. But I've been listening, and I'm just really, honored by how much passion there is for the Dalles, and the work that needs to be done is good work. And the focus is Old Town, downtown should be, or I think it should be. And whatever investments that are made will come back,
Oops, you went on mute again. Bumped it.
The investments that are made downtown will come back in multiples, especially with the housing. And I think if housing is downtown, it will flatten out those up and down curves. The more people you have downtown, the more vibrant the downtown's going to be, kind of no matter what happens with the economy. So I'm really excited for what Alice has put together, and I'm hoping we can make this all happen. Thanks.
Great. So I think staff has gotten some direction from us, but I do want to just confirm whether or not the board wants staff time spent to try to figure out a scoring mechanism that somehow weights locals or whatever, or do we want to just keep reviewing the proposals as we have been as a group? What direction would you like to give? Board Member Bailey.
Instead of local or non-local, how about what meets the mission? Measure it against what meets our true mission of our organization as a measurement.
Okay, so scoring that, okay. Other thoughts for staff direction?
I didn't vocalize this, but I guess in my mind, when I was thinking about the locals question, was really against national chains, as opposed to an investor, an entrepreneur that I don't necessarily care if they graduated from high school here 30 years ago. That's great, but that not everybody can be so blessed. If they're willing to put in time and money and invest here, that's great. Personally, I don't want to see a Dollar General downtown. I don't think that's going to be good for our community. I don't think, and I guess I'm taking the long way around to say, I think Diana might have a point that if we could define our mission as, diverse number of businesses and residences, that maybe that gets at that concern without getting into how do we define locals?
Okay. Yep, that's great. Because one of the things that I hear talked about all the time for downtown is a grocery store or something. So, there's some staff direction. Bring us back some way to score this so we can get what we want.
Could
No,
I
small-
make one comment on that?
Yes.
Okay, we heard loud and clear that people want ground floor retail. It is exceptionally hard to get ground floor retail. You know, as you know, there's several blocks of it in downtown. So we were happy to go after it. We'll go after it, proactively and aggressively, and make sure that it's there. We believe in that too. But you have to put it in. There's a limit. There's a cap on what kind of public match there can be towards some of these costs. And then then there's a limit on what kind of tenant we could go after. It starts to get pretty overwhelming fast. So I would just say, we're not going to go pursue Starbucks, but if they were willing to go in, or if Panda Express was a ground floor tenant, I don't think that would be a horrible, a tenant. And then there's therapy groups, with McKedge, you don't need one. I mean, with the MCMC, you don't need one. But for example, if you just start layering on limitations and regulations, it's going to make the task pretty challenging.
Thank you. Okay, so I think staff has direction. I would like to bring this back at our next regular meeting. I'm not talking about adding it on the budget meeting. I mean, the next meeting. And we'll make it an action item so we can talk about it some more. But if we're not ready at that point, I would still want to have another really good discussion. We can always defer taking action at that point because we're already going to be past the budgeting. And I think it's more important to get this right and then go for it than it is to pass it quickly. So,
So
right.
let me ask a quick follow-up
Yes.
question, and that is that April is shaping up to be a busy month with budget. So we're already scheduled to have an April 12th budget meeting and maybe add a special agenda item that you'll hear about in a few minutes. Our regular meeting, if we have it, would be April 19th, the following Tuesday. Do you want to have that meeting, skip it, and consider this again in May? What are your thoughts?
I would be inclined to have the regular meeting, but I would like to take a quick poll of the group. Is everyone willing to do a separate the budget meeting the 12th, and then the following week our regular urban renewal meeting, so we can move forward on these incentives? Nod, shake your head, something. I see nodding. Okay, that's what we're gonna do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, thank you. Okay, so now we have Dan Spots to give us a presentation, make a request for the Community College Fermentation Science Partnership Opportunity. Mr. Spots?
Thank you, Chair Long, Director Cannon, and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity. Dan Spots, Capital Projects Director for Columbia Gorge Community College, 400 East Scenic, the Dalles. I'd like to provide a little bit of background, and I am going to be presenting a potential project for your consideration, and it's a good follow-up really to this entire discussion tonight. First, a little bit of background on this. Back in 2018, the community college brought on a feasibility study around the fermentation industry. And I'd like to quote from just a brief paragraph from one of the recommendations from that study. TPMA, that was our consultant, recommends that CGCC consider developing a pilot brewing facility. Such a facility would provide an essential service for test runs at small batches from mid and large size brewers. In concert with the Associate of Arts degree in Food and Science and Fermentation, this facility will also provide students with valuable and necessary hands-on experience. that is one of three strands leading to my presentation tonight. The second strand began about a year and a half ago as we explored the development of an agricultural program. This would be based on the Hood River campus, but it would incorporate agricultural sectors throughout the Mid-Columbia. It would be a dual credit agricultural program of study with a focus on technology aspects of agriculture, such as remote sensing, robotics, UAV, UAS applications, and fermentation specific to fermentation sciences. One application of that is taking place in the Dalles right now with remote sensors on freebridge tanks that notify the owners if, for instance, the HVAC system fails in the brewing facility, which happened actually last year. So we are looking at applications like that, PLCs, programmable logic controllers, things of that nature that we are doing now and that we could apply to the fermentation sector. Those are two strands. The third strand, and the one that lends maybe some urgency to the discussion, or maybe not, depending upon how we want to play this, is a program through USDA rural development called RISE. And that is rural innovation focus and looking for industry specific sectors such as agriculture. We see the agricultural program as a very good match with this RISE program. It's a $2 million grant program, and it requires a 20% match. So with that, I'd like to talk about what we would propose doing in downtown the Dalles, uniting elements of that agricultural program of study, the 2018 feasibility study around fermentation sciences, and the viticulture, brewing, and cider industry that we have around the Columbia Gorge, and focusing that on downtown the Dalles. If I may share my screen.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that you see in front of you now a draft Word document, and I do emphasize draft. And this is written with a focus on the RISE opportunity. So it does have there are some requirements in that grant, and this paper, and I'll distribute it to you after the meeting, is kind of written with that in mind. Working title, The Columbia Gorge Brew Hub, keeping downtown the Dalles as the hub of viticulture, brewing, and cider making in the Columbia Gorge. Gather in place in downtown the Dalles, fostering and showcasing our various viticulture industries. Geographic scope, incorporating all of these counties, and this is in keeping with one of the requirements of the USDA Rural Development Grant. We need to focus this on low-income rural communities. It cannot be based in Hood River. It cannot be based in certain areas of the Dalles even, because we do not meet the low-income criteria. Most of Klickitat County does. Certainly large sections of downtown the Dalles and west of the Dalles do pertain, as do other elements of the Mid-Columbia region. There would be a retail center. This is again a working document, on-site sales of Columbia Gorge wines, beers, ciders, fermented teas and spirits, gift shop, information center. All of this is a commercial aspect to this. We are not proposing a nonprofit center. This would be a commercial facility, including wine tastings and special events. So we would be directing people and basically acting as an information hub for the region's fermentation sectors. Innovation Center would be new and existing brewers need a place to test recipes. That's what came out in that 2018 study that I just mentioned. They often don't have the capacity to set aside a full tank to test a new recipe. So this speaks to the need for innovation and the need to support innovation in our fermentation sector by providing basically a test lab for brewers, for winemakers, especially brewers, to test out new recipes without dedicating an entire production tank to the process. So there would be also a small batch capacity for startups, established brewers, an on-site lab for proof testing. We're also talking about spirits, yeast cultures, product testing, other things of that nature. Businesses interested in expanding or starting a business would enroll in counseling through the Small Business Development Center. So this is where we have a crossover with an existing service through the college. Full-time enrollment, we receive in compensation from the state would return a share of income to the business entity that would be established to run all of this. We would have a restaurant, perhaps on-site dining with menus paired to local beers, wines, and ciders. We would be able to offer our community education classes around non-credit home brewing classes and beers, wines, ciders, bringing in guest instructors from our fermentation sectors. Again, the Small Business Development Center role in business counseling to get these businesses up and running, and that's a big part of what we do at the college. Greg Price is our executive director for the SBDC and accesses capital resources and providing training to help small businesses get started and succeed. There would be a job training element. And this is where we go into the agricultural program that I'd mentioned earlier. Certain aspects of that would lend themselves to the fermentation sciences as we train the workforce needed to grow our fermentation industry. We anticipate starting that program in 2023. We have a feasibility study that was funded this past December. That is underway right now. We expect to wrap it up probably in May, which will define the scope and the various elements of curriculum in the agricultural study, the agricultural program. The RISE grant that we anticipate applying for would fund the Innovation Center infrastructure, the tanks, the tank capacity, equipment, some of the materials dedicated to the Innovation Center that I've been talking about. It would also help fund some of the job training taking place in there. Preponderance would go to the tanks, the equipment associated with the Innovation Center, with the fermentation study, basically with the brew hub that I'm talking about here. We would offer credit classes through the agricultural program, and all of this would allow a testing center for technology innovations. Whatever might come out of the agricultural program, and I'm going to go over just briefly to a slide deck that we prepared on this. Again, this program right now is focused on the Hood River campus. However, we are talking about a program that would incorporate all of the agricultural sectors of the Mid-Columbia. It's called a TIA, Ag Tech Education Alliance. In here, we talk about the challenges facing agriculture, rising costs, market challenges, cost of farmland, farm succession, and the threatened loss of farmlands, long-term challenges such as climate change, rising labor costs, global competition. And we propose this Venn diagram: agriculture, education, and technology. The technology part is what I'm talking about with the center in the Dalles, because as we look to the final slide, we're looking at opportunities for entrepreneurship, to come up with new inventions, new innovations, which may be tested in the field. And we have a farm potential acquisition in Hood River County, but also testing those innovations in the lab. And that's why we'll be talking about the center in downtown the Dalles. So that's kind of the entrepreneurial and the equipment testing, innovation testing, things that we're talking about in the center here. Roles and responsibilities. Again, this is focused on the USDA Rural Development grant proposal, and so there are certain parameters in that we need to keep in mind. Ownership, site, and control. Ultimately, it would need to be by Columbia Gorge Community College if we are the entity submitting the grant. It could also be submitted by the city, by others. It could not be submitted by a private entity. Again, the cap on the grant is $2 million. So those would be $2 million of federal dollars coming into downtown the Dalles if we were to receive this. We would be creating a taxable entity, so we would return financial investment to the Urban Renewal District. The business entity would operate the Brewing Innovation Center and the retail center. We would lease out the restaurant space. We do have a couple of sites in mind, one in particular. I probably would not want to go into details in this meeting on those sites yet. We would be looking at Urban Renewal to invest as a grant toward that RISE opportunity. So 20% of $2 million would be $400,000. That speaks to some of the cap discussion that you've had earlier in tonight's meeting. The RISE grant would provide funding for non-movable equipment for fermentation components, tanks, etc., as well as some support for workforce training. There are the numbers for that grant. We would be the lead applicant under this scenario. The City of the Dalles or Urban Renewal would be a co-applicant. Additional co-applicants are possible. We would fund job training through the, again, through the agricultural program that we're talking about now. Again, that feasibility study is going to be completed in May. The current round of RISE applications are due mid-April, April 19th. So it's coming right up. This is the second year for this program. We anticipate it continuing. So we may or may not try to submit a proposal in April. That is really rushed. And again, we've had a lot of discussions leading up to this, but suddenly you have a federal application that comes out, and sometimes you need to rush it. Sometimes you need to decide, well, let's give this a little bit more time to cook. And so that's a strategic discussion. One of the reasons we wanted to bring this before Urban Renewal is to kind of prompt that discussion. Finally, we are investigating other potential sources of private capital equity for this project. But what we would really like to accomplish in downtown the Dalles, whether through a RISE application this year or the following year, is to create this hub of viticulture, breweries, brewing, cidery making, other things like that in downtown the Dalles, because we see the Dalles as a focal point for our fermentation industry throughout the Mid-Columbia. We don't have that focal point right now. It's dispersed, it's distributed. It makes sense to have some sort of a showcase piece for all of that taking place. And the Dalles seems to be a logical showcase. There used to be over 100 breweries and brew pubs in the Dalles back in the 19th century. And wouldn't it be fun to revisit that to a certain extent with a 21st century version of that? So that's the project, the opportunity I wanted to share with you. And again, I'll send this documentation. We can send the 2018 feasibility study and anything else that comes forward.
Thank you. So basically, because that grant deadline is coming up, what we wanted to do is bring this to you tonight to see if you had any interest in Director Cannon working with the college and Mr. Spots to put together an actual proposal for you to review. If so, because of the grant deadline, that would be coming out to us via email, and then we would be reviewing it right after the budget meeting on the 12th. So now is a good time to ask questions and then just give some general feedback as to whether or not you'd like them to work toward that in case they do put the grant proposal in. Questions?
I'll go if you don't mind.
Thank
Director
you.
Long. Chair Long.
Mhm.
Dan, good evening. Thank you. That's a really interesting concept, and also the Brew Hub is a great name. That's funny. It's perfect. I mean, it's fitting. Admit to being a little overwhelmed and a little rushed at the thought of throwing that kind of money at something kind of last minute. And did I catch you, or did I hear you correctly saying there's a current sort of follow-up feasibility study that gets completed in May? Is that right?
Yes. Not until after the grant deadline.
Yeah. What happens if we put in, what happens if we were to put in and pledge a bunch of money and the feasibility study came back and said, it's gotta, you gotta let this one ferment a bit more?
That is a consideration. It is a consideration. We, based on a year and a half discussion with upwards of 75 growers around the Mid-Columbia region, including cherry growers around the Dalles, orchardists in Hood River, viticulture, brewers, we have a pretty good read on the need. The study is going to focus more on capacity of individual classes, specifics of the curriculum. The broad need that I've discussed here, I don't think is open to question. That part, everyone around the table over the past year and a half has spoken to the need for this type of program in the Mid-Columbia region. So I think I'm fairly comfortable on that one. it would be nice if the study were completed prior to this grant deadline. As I mentioned too, we would anticipate this program continuing into the following year, the RISE program. This is the second year. We are continuing under the current administration for at least another 2 years, and that tends to lend some longevity to this type of grant program at the federal agency level.
I support exploring the concept, but I am a little uneasy about the rushed nature of throwing this level of money at it personally.
Yep. So yeah, definitely ask your questions now. We're not making a decision tonight. We're just letting them know whether or not we want more information and what information we want brought back to consider. Yes. Board Member Schwartz.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit confused around process here, because I think that there's probably other people that have been on this call that might want to give us a pitch tonight as well. I'm just, you know, it's just a little bit uncomfortable, I think, because, you know, do we always entertain projects at this meeting or what? I don't know what our process is. And I do feel like this is a rushed one. I'm sorry, Dan, you know, I just could hardly follow, you know, the trail of this project. Part of it because it's late and I'm hungry. Full disclosure here, but you know, process is important to me, and I want to be sure that we're fair to, and we have a process for when we entertain ideas, not necessarily because there's a grant coming up and it's a great opportunity, but we have a process that we follow. Just not sure what it is. So,
Director Cannon.
Chair and Board Member Schwartz, my point exactly. I do. The only time in my tenure that we've entertained a quick turnaround question like this was when I first arrived. There was a grant opportunity with North Wasco Parks and Recreation for the Greenway, Mill Creek Greenway Trail, and we decided very quickly to commit $300,000. And so normally we wouldn't entertain such a request from a private sector entity, but we do with our government partners. We have entertained it that way. I brought it up because I knew we had full agendas for the next month. And so that's kind of why I brought things a little bit out of process. And also they have a deadline. But I did share my concern, and Dan's heard it already, that this is coming rather quickly. So.
Board Member Coburn, did I see you raising your hand? Okay. Board Member Jemay.
I have to say I've been impressed. I've been constantly impressed by what the college is putting together as different programs. So I think this is a really interesting program, and it'd be wonderful to bring something like this to the community. Seems like there's kind of two pieces to it too. There's the program aspect of it, and then there's the actual like location and brew hub. So I think I was a little overwhelmed because there was a lot kind of packed in there. So the program I think is an amazing idea, and I would love to see that come to life. The actual like a brew hub component, I do think there's some like little bubbles of that in town too. So I don't know if there's even an opportunity to bring some of those folks together, because Wines on Second just popped up. Gorge Wine Library is also in town. And then there is a new business that just opened in the Foley that's supposed to do wine education. And I don't know them yet, so I don't want to speak to their business, but there may even be a bigger collaborative initiative to create this sort of hub with some people that are already in town as well. But I think it's a wonderful idea. And I don't know from a funding perspective how I feel at this particular moment, but I'd love to see your program from an education perspective come to life.
Question, Dan. Yes. You, in one of the slides, and again, it was really quick, but in one of the slides, you said there was like a private owner, but the college would manage. So can you just explain that just briefly, what that slide, what you meant by that? Did I read that? It said there was like a privately or.
Let's see here.
But the college would manage, something about the college would manage. About halfway.
Oh, on the screen share on the program itself, the college would manage certain aspects of this. The college would create basically an LLC or another private entity, in keeping with the need to return revenue to urban renewal so that we don't have a publicly owned entity downtown that does not return profit to urban renewal. That's the intent of that.
That's what it meant. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
And to the discussions tonight, really, I wanted to bring this forward because I think it is a strategic discussion, and the questions being asked right now are very valid. Unfortunately, sometimes you have a fast grant deadline, and when 2 million is on the table, it tends to capture my attention. But at the same time, you need to be able to walk away from that or kick it down the road and spend some more time working on it. If at a minimum, I have this on your radar screens now to be thinking, number one, of a potential cap down the road. If the same grant were to come down with the same criteria, 20% for 2 million, then I think that might inform the cap discussions that you've been having tonight. And I think would be in keeping with that. At the same time, it would give us time over the next year to fine tune this, to refine it, to bring in some of the other partnerships that you've just mentioned, most of which I'm aware of. There was one that I was not, and I want to find out more about that information and see if there could be broader participation in this, while keeping that central idea of a central hub, something of high visibility that would showcase the fermentation industry in the Mid-Columbia.
Dan,
So-
can I ask? Sorry.
No, go ahead, Board Member Richardson.
Thank you. Dan, can you speak to the private operator aspect of the idea? Is that locked down? Do you have someone ready to go, or is it really, that's a critical piece and would have to fall into place as funding came up?
We do have someone in mind. I would not say that that is quite ready to go, but those discussions have been underway for a good 6 months and would be a fairly strong candidate. I am not in a position to identify in the meeting tonight, though. If you were to go forward in April, then I would certainly expect to make that public.
So what I would like to propose tonight, since it's 7:45, is that we have Director Cannon or staff that she assigns work with the college and Mr. Spots to bring back a specific request for after our budget meeting, and specifically looking toward whether or not we're going to be able to support them in their grant application, with the full understanding that we may very well say no after we have all that information in front of us. I think I'm just saying what you already know, Dan, which is everyone's a little overwhelmed and it came up fast, and I only heard about it this afternoon as well. But I think we do want to support our community partners by at least giving it consideration, and we definitely need more information in front of us that we can take the time and consider, and also think about with the other discussion item tonight. So unless someone objects, that's the instruction I'd like to give to staff. Okay. Go for
Thank
it,
you.
Director Cannon.
That makes perfect sense to me. Thank you very much.
Dan.
All right. Any other business to come before the board before I adjourn? All right. Seeing none, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for participating.